The 2,800-year-old legend hidden inside fortune cookies. When you break open a fortune cookie at a Chinese restaurant, you probably don't realize that you are participating in a ritual that hides one of the most fascinating legends in ancient history. Behind that little piece of paper with a motivational phrase is an ancient tradition dating back more than 2,800 years, involving military strategies, popular resistance, and the preservation of secrets that changed the course of Chinese civilization. The mysterious origins, far beyond cuisine. Although many people believe that fortune cookies are a purely Chinese tradition, the truth is much more complex and interesting. The legend that gave rise to these small, crunchy sweets was not born in restaurant kitchens, but on the battlefields of ancient China during one of the most turbulent periods in its history. To understand this fascinating connection, we need to go back in time to the Yuan dynasty, which ruled China between 1271 and 1368. This was a period of Mongol domination, when the descendants of Genghis Khan controlled the vast Chinese empire. The Chinese people lived under foreign rule, their traditions were suppressed, and resistance seemed impossible in the face of Mongol military power. It was in this context of oppression and despair that one of the most ingenious resistance strategies in history was born: secret communication through food. But to fully understand this story, we need to delve even deeper into China's past. Ancient China and the art of psychological warfare. Approximately 2,800 years ago, during the period known as the Warring States period, 476–221 BC, China was fragmented into several states that constantly fought each other for control of the territory. In this turbulent era, military strategists developed sophisticated techniques of warfare that went far beyond direct confrontation on the battlefield. One such technique involved the use of secret messages hidden in everyday objects. Generals discovered that crucial information about troop movements, attack plans, and defense strategies could be discreetly conveyed through seemingly innocuous items. Merchants, peasants, and even servants could carry these messages without arousing suspicion. The genius of this strategy lay in its simplicity. In a society where most people were illiterate, common objects became perfect vehicles for clandestine communication. Fabrics with specific patterns, ceramics with particular markings, and especially food with messages hidden inside. The emergence of the mooncake tradition. During the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 AD, this ancient tradition of hiding messages in food evolved into a more refined practice. The so-called mooncakes, round sweets consumed during the autumn moon festival, began to be used not only as religious offerings, but also as a means of secret communication between noble families and merchants. These cakes had a special feature. They were made with layers that allowed small pieces of paper to be hidden inside without damaging their external appearance. The preparation technique was kept under lock and key by specialized confectioners, who often worked for spy networks or resistance groups. The tradition grew stronger over the following centuries, especially during periods of political instability. Government officials, merchants, and even members of the royal family used these special sweets to exchange sensitive information without attracting the attention of the authorities. The Great Revolt and the decisive role of secret messages. The most dramatic moment in this legend occurred during the end of the Yuan dynasty, around the 14th century. The Chinese population had endured decades of Mongol rule, but dissatisfaction was growing every day. Abusive taxes, cultural discrimination, and the suppression of Chinese traditions created an environment conducive to a great popular uprising. It was in this context that Zhu Yuanzhang, a revolutionary leader who would later become the founder of the Ming dynasty, emerged. Zhu and his allies faced a seemingly impossible challenge: how to coordinate a large-scale revolt without the Mongols discovering their plans. The answer came from the ancient tradition of hiding messages in food. But this time, the scale of the operation would be unprecedented. Instead of using only traditional mooncakes, the revolutionaries developed a new type of sweet, small, crispy cookies that could be produced in large quantities and distributed discreetly throughout China. The secret network of revolutionary bakeries, the plan devised by Zhu Yuanzhang and his strategists, was impressively ingenious. They established a secret network of bakeries and pastry shops in all the major cities of the empire. These seemingly ordinary establishments were, in fact, centers of operations for the Chinese resistance. Each bakery received specific instructions on how to prepare the special cookies. The recipe was not just culinary, it was also a military code. The texture of the cookie, its color, the exact shape, everything had meaning. And inside each cookie, carefully folded and protected from moisture, was a small piece of paper with part of the instructions for the coordinated uprising. The messages were written in a special code that combined traditional Chinese characters with ancient symbols. Only local resistance leaders knew how to fully decipher the content. To any ordinary person who might come across one of these pieces of paper, the words would appear to be nothing more than traditional proverbs or spiritual advice. The day of the big reveal oral tradition has impressively preserved the details of what happened during the so-called August full moon day. According to legends passed down through the generations, a specific date was chosen during the autumn moon festival of 1368 for all the special cookies to be opened simultaneously across China. The choice of this date was not random. The Mid-Autumn Festival was one of the most important celebrations in the Chinese calendar, a time when families gathered and shared traditional sweets. The Mongols, knowing this tradition, would not suspect anything when they saw Chinese people distributing and consuming cookies during the festivities. On the morning of the chosen day, thousands of Chinese in hundreds of cities opened their special cookies and discovered the message that would change the country's destiny. On the 15th night of the 8th month, when the moon is full, rise up as one people and liberate our ancestral land. The coordinated uprising and its consequences. What happened next went down in history as one of the most well-coordinated revolts of antiquity. Within hours, Mongol garrisons across the Chinese Empire found themselves surrounded by organized crowds of armed Chinese. Communication via the cookies worked perfectly. Different resistance groups attacked simultaneously, preventing the Mongols from sending reinforcements to each other. The revolution was a resounding success. Within a few months, Mongol rule over China came to an end, and Zhu Yuanzhang was proclaimed emperor, ushering in the glorious Ming dynasty. But perhaps most impressive was how a simple culinary tradition became the decisive instrument for the liberation of one of the greatest empires in history. The transformation of a revolutionary symbol. After the victory over the Mongols, the cookies with secret messages could have disappeared from Chinese history. After all, their military purpose had been successfully fulfilled. But something interesting happened. The Chinese population developed a special fondness for these little sweets that symbolized their liberation. During the Ming dynasty, the tradition evolved. The cookies no longer carried military messages and began to contain proverbs, spiritual advice, and predictions about the future. It became common to prepare these sweets during family celebrations, weddings, and religious festivals. The messages now spoke of prosperity, love, wisdom, and good luck. Confectioners developed increasingly refined recipes. The dough became crispier. The shape was perfected to make it easier to break without damaging the paper inside, and regional variations with different flavors and textures emerged. Some Chinese provinces created their own versions, adapting the tradition to their cultural particularities. The journey through the centuries. Over the centuries that followed, The tradition of fortune cookies remained alive in Chinese culture, albeit with ups and downs. Periods of political stability saw the practice flourish as a form of entertainment and spiritual reflection. During times of turmoil, however, the cookies were occasionally used again for discreet communication between opposition groups. The Qing dynasty, 1644–1912, established by the Manchus, initially attempted to suppress many Chinese traditions, including fortune cookies. The new rulers, being of foreign origin themselves, understood the revolutionary potential hidden in this seemingly harmless culinary tradition. For decades, the production of these cookies was restricted or banned in several regions, but the tradition was too resilient to die. Chinese families continued to prepare the cookies in secret, passing down recipes and techniques from generation to generation. Small, clandestine bakeries kept alive the art of hiding messages in sweets, even when it posed a personal risk to their owners. The Great Migration and cultural transformation, the 19th century brought dramatic changes to China and, consequently, to the tradition of fortune cookies. The Opium Wars, pressure from Western powers, and internal instability forced millions of Chinese to emigrate to other countries in search of opportunities and security. These immigrants took their culinary traditions with them, including their knowledge of special cookies. Initially, the practice remained something reserved for Chinese communities abroad. Families prepared the cookies during traditional celebrations, keeping alive the connection with their homeland. But an interesting transformation began to take place. As Chinese immigrants settled in countries such as the United States, Canada, and others, they had to adapt their traditions to their new cultural environments. Fortune cookies, with their unique combination of crunchy sweetness and inspirational messages, aroused curiosity among non-Chinese people. The American reinvention. It was in the United States that the tradition of fortune cookies underwent its most significant transformation. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Chinese restaurants in cities such as San Francisco and New York began serving these cookies to Western customers as an exotic and entertaining dessert. The owners of these establishments quickly realized that Americans were fascinated by the idea of receiving a prophecy or advice after their meal. The ancient tradition of hiding messages in food took on a new life in a completely different context. To meet growing demand, restaurateurs had to industrialize the production process. Special machines were developed to produce the cookies on a large scale, while maintaining their essential characteristic. Each cookie had to contain a unique message. The messages, in turn, were adapted for the American public, focusing on universal themes such as success, love, and prosperity. The modern era and the globalization of tradition. In the 20th century, fortune cookies became a global phenomenon. Chinese restaurants around the world adopted the practice of serving these sweets to their customers. The tradition that began as a secret military strategy had become a popular symbol of Chinese culture abroad. Interestingly, many Chinese people in China itself were surprised to discover that fortune cookies were considered a typically Chinese tradition in the West. During the period of the People's Republic of China, especially in the 1950s to 1980s, many ancient traditions were suppressed or forgotten, including the original story of cookies with secret messages. It was only with China's economic opening and increased cultural exchange that many Chinese rediscovered the fascinating origin of a tradition that had become more popular abroad than in its homeland. The deeper meaning beyond fun. Although most people today see fortune cookies as a simple treat after a Chinese meal, the tradition carries much deeper meanings when we understand its historical origins. Each cookie represents the human capacity to resist oppression through creativity and unity. The legend of fortune cookies teaches us about the importance of communication, coordination, and cultural preservation. It shows how seemingly simple traditions can carry within them the wisdom and experience of thousands of years of human history. More importantly, the story demonstrates how resilient and adaptable culture is. The same tradition that served to bring down an empire in the 14th century has found new life as a form of entertainment and reflection in the 21st century. The messages may have changed, but the fundamental principle remains: the human search for guidance, hope, and connection to something greater than ourselves. Preserving historical memory today, Chinese cultural organizations around the world work to preserve and spread the true story behind fortune cookies. Museums dedicated to Chinese culture often include exhibits on this tradition, explaining to visitors how a simple sweet can carry centuries of history and meaning within it. Food scholars and cultural anthropologists continue to research the exact origins of the tradition, searching for historical documents and oral accounts that may shed light on details about how exactly the cookies were used during the uprising against the Mongols. Each discovery adds a new layer to the understanding of this fascinating history. The contemporary legacy, the 2,800-year-old legend hidden inside fortune cookies, remains relevant in the modern world. In an era of instant digital communication, the idea of hiding messages in physical objects may seem outdated, but the fundamental principle, using creativity to overcome obstacles and unite people around common goals, remains as valid as ever. Modern companies study the communication strategies used by Chinese revolutionaries as examples of viral marketing and organizational coordination. The ability to disseminate a message discreetly and effectively through a decentralized network of people is something that resonates strongly in the age of social media and global communication. Conclusion: a tradition that transcends time. The next time you break open a fortune cookie, remember that you are participating in a tradition that connects you to 2,800 years of human history. From the ancient military strategists of the Warring States period, to the revolutionaries who overthrew Mongol rule, to the immigrants who brought this tradition around the world, each fortune cookie carries within it the heritage of countless generations. The message you find may be simple, perhaps advice on prosperity or a reflection on wisdom. But behind these words lies one of humanity's most extraordinary stories of resilience, creativity, and cultural preservation. It is a reminder that the most enduring traditions are those that can adapt and find new meaning with each generation, keeping alive the essence of their origins while embracing the possibilities of the future. The legend of fortune cookies is ultimately a story about the power of ideas, the strength of unity, and the importance of preserving our cultural heritage. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes the simplest gestures, like breaking open a small cookie and reading a message, can connect us to the deepest currents of human experience.